Welcome to Pass the Mic, Let's Talk, an initiative of the African Center for Ideas program through Jade Communications. This edition is part of a series of conversations on Kenya's general election, August 2022. Our focus will be on the electoral process. I'm John Sibi Okumu, and my guest is Lilian Mahiri Zaja, a former vice chairperson and commissioner of the IEBC, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission of Kenya. She is now a governance and elections consultant. Welcome, Lilian, if I may.
Thank you, John.
Lilian, I wish to read you some of my preparatory notes. On the 15th of June 2021, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission launched the Elections Operations Plan and a one-year roadmap to the 22 general election. In addition, the IEBC gave the various timelines that must be observed by candidates vying for political seats. There are growing concerns about the IEBC's credibility, political independence, and capacity to manage the electoral process, raising serious concerns about a peaceful transition of power in next year's election. Now, I'm going to imagine for a moment that you, Lilian Mahiri Zaja, were to write your memoirs about your experience of your time at the IEBC. As a springboard to these concerns, would you like to look back on what your chapter of the process might read like?
That chapter, John, will have a lot of interesting and many areas of concern, especially to do with political interference, political engagement with the commission, with the commissioners as policymakers. And for me, I know it will stand out because I will want to say that the commission needs to be given space to conduct elections. We always say that the commission conducts elections, whereas the politicians contest elections. So without that space, and when it comes to handling their mandate, they will need time off from the politicians so that they can do their activities. And these activities are both administrative and statutory. So the election operations plan has been rolled out, and you will see now a lot of political activities and blames and allegations of the commission not being credible, the commission not being prepared. And I think this is an area which I can unpack and show that if the commissioners are given enough time, they can carry out their mandate as envisaged under the Constitution.
Could we attempt to do some of that unpacking here and now? And let me place myself in the position of the informed citizen, somebody who has the capacity to read, somebody who has the education to take in, analyze, elucidate, etc., etc. One of the things that I find strange about the IEBC is that to start off with, the political dispensation is that all the commissioners have to have the presidential seal of approval. And in your own experience, surely you remember that in 2017, your mandate was not renewed. So the blame game cannot be with the IEBC, because it would be a suggestion that all the commissioners have to respond to the beck and call of somebody beyond them. Is
That's a loaded statement, John. You have said it rightly. The commissioners have a 6-year term under the Constitution. But remember, yes, when they are appointed by the President in consultation with Parliament. So they have some form of independence. But it is not absolute, because remember, this is a constitutional commission, and under the Constitution, Parliament must allocate them enough funds for them to carry out their mandate, which is clearly spelled out. But again, remember, this is an area which IEBC has come out guns blazing that we do not have enough funds, and government has not allocated us enough funds. And an example is the current voter registration going on. They have said it, they do not have enough funds. And if they do not have the funds, they can only do one phase, which is 30 days, and then the rest will be to ensure they continue with the continuous voter registration at the constituency levels and not the mass voter registration. So there is some form of independence, but it is not completely autonomous when it comes to financial independence.
Sorry, let me unpack that particular statement. I'm still asking, in terms of all the citizens of our beloved nation, why would you be chosen to be a commissioner over me? Why is your level of integrity essentially superior to mine, so that I can say, there is Lilian Mahiri Zaja as a commissioner, all will be well? Because in terms of the chapter 6, the idea of integrity, how does it affect the commissioner? Because it seems to me that as a nation we're placing a tremendous load on their shoulders as mere human beings.
Yes, indeed. And remember, the commission that was appointed in 2011, which I was a commissioner and vice chair, was appointed in a very competitive way. It is set in the constitution. The qualifications of commissioners is set in the constitution, and you have to be compliant with chapter 6. So you are appointed, and after your appointment you have to go through the vetting in parliament. So it is not.
I would assume that you have to express a wish to be a member.
You have to apply.
You could go to every village and say, who is the most feared, the respected person of this village, and all the Wananchi say it's Lilian Mahiri Zaja, then you present yourself. But you actually, in wanting to be vice chairperson, were looking for a job.
I was looking for a job, yes, and I felt that I fitted the bill because I know my record. I had been serving under the Ministry of Justice, which is now a department in the State Law Office. I was very senior, and I was, mandated to handle constitutional process and electoral reforms. So I felt I was in a position as a Kenyan to qualify to serve as a commissioner in the IEBC, because the vice chair came later. But as a commissioner, I had all the qualifications which are spelled out in the law, which are spelled out in the IEBC Act, and I felt I could go for it. And I believe I'm a person of integrity, very high integrity. My record speaks for itself, and I went out for it.
Well, I wouldn't dare challenge that self-assessment. What I'm interested in the institutional process is that you then find yourself in the company of 7, 8, 9 other people whom you've never met before, and who'd also say, I'm a woman or man of great integrity. How do you form the cohesion that will make you credible to the nation at large?
We were very fortunate that we gelled as a team. And remember, my chairperson, Ahmed Isaac Hassan, had quite some experience in the public sector. I had also very good experience in public sector. We had also other commissioners who had experiences from their various occupations, and we came together and we agreed that this job we are doing is not for personal gain, but we focused on the national duty. We focused on delivery of service to the Mwananchi. So in that sense, every decision we made was by consensus. This is by law. The IEBC Act spells out that you can regulate your own procedures. However, when it comes to decision making, you must build consensus. So in every decision we made, that consensus was there, except for one time when we had to vote. And I remember clearly it was on the question of diaspora voting. And I remember very well, Cabinet had made a decision that there would be no diaspora voting. But we came back as a team, we sat, we were 9 of us, and we said, we have a constitutional mandate to report on the voter or voting for Kenyans living abroad. So how are we going to make our annual report to the president, to parliament, without this specific constituency? So we voted, and it was a unanimous decision that we were going out there. So in a way, I would say we were very fortunate that we gelled. We had a very good teamwork, a very good understanding with our chairman. And even when he was not there and I was in the chair, it was all cordial and decisions were smooth.
Do forgive me, but the momentum is forward. That was then, now is now. From what you've said, one of the areas of concern is that there seems to be a lack of cohesion in the current commission. Is that a cause for concern? Because that was our key word. What is there to be worried about in the next 10 months? People who are leading an essential process who don't get along, some of whom resign along the way.
Indeed, it is so worrying. Remember the Isaac Hassan team we left in January 2017, to be precise on 20th January. And that is when the Chebukati team came in. Chebukati conducted the 2017 general election, but in 2018, 4 of his colleagues just walked out. We were hearing of internal strife, but we didn't think it was that serious until after the elections when the 4 walked out. And when they walked out, Chebukati remained with 2 other commissioners. They've been limping until only recently, last month, when the new commissioners were appointed and came into office. It is of concern because if you don't have a team that is working together, you can easily be manipulated, easily be interfered with by the political class. This is what happened to the 4 who left. But we are hoping that moving forward, the new commissioners who have come in, they will gel with the 3 who are in place so that they can deliver a free and fair election to Kenyans, and more so a peaceful election.
Lilian, I wouldn't dare sort of assume that you know the answers to questions that the rest of us don't. But so that is an area of concern, and I take it on board. I want to give you another layman's perception and take your period in land. The idea that I'm going to register, I'm going to have my biometric data, and everything is going to be dealt with by technology. But there is a great scope for the elections to be manipulated and for foreign companies that are consultants to come and mess, either coming from abroad, and make a complete shambles of the electoral process and have the imposition of the deep state. In other words, rig the elections. So if I believe that elections are going to be rigged, do you think I should really get out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning to queue up for 4 hours to vote?
And this concern has been in the media for a while now. And in particular, when you look at the way the law is very prescriptive about technology. We have put it in the law, in the Elections Act, that we shall have a system that is integrated. And now we have the Kenya Integrated Electoral Management System that prescribes exactly what should happen. So really leaving very little room for any other way to do it. And IEBC must...
Let me take you back to in the national sort of mentality. The idea that the chief sort of IT wizard that is handling all this, we wake up one fine day and he's lying dead in the forest somewhere. Your integrated system is not going to make it possible for some people to be eliminated because they're playing the game. Is this some sort of conspiracy theory? I would like you, as a commissioner, because you're talking to somebody who doesn't know anything about machines. When the machines fail, when does human intelligence come in to interrogate the person?
Yeah, unfortunately with technology, it is not 100% proof. And we know technology can fail. It has failed. But the good thing is that the law also requires the electoral managers to get the hard copy results. And this is why the elections, the results, once the results are pinned outside a polling station, as required by the law, that is the result that is usually transmitted directly to the constituency and again transmitted to the county and finally to the National Tallying Center so that the presidential election result can be announced. However, there is that concern that if it fails, so what? What happens? And there is a lot of mistrust when it comes to technology, which is something that we cannot help because we know technology evolves, technology changes. You might put in a system that you think is foolproof and yet it can let you down. In 2013 we saw that. In 2017 we saw
Lilian,
that.
I'm sure the process for a young, intelligent 7 to 12-year-old, it begins at the polling booth. It begins when somebody goes and says, I want Lilian to be president. And from that moment, whatever the mechanics, whether it's human counting, I want you as a commissioner to explain to me, August 2022, how it's going to be possible for what the game source to be recorded adequately before we start hearing the results. Because again, in human memory, we're waiting for results to come in whatever year. And it seems as if a certain candidate is a front runner. And then in the last 2 seconds, everybody's coming in and, there are results from Talibanini, some place, Kilimambogo, and it's a landslide in the reverse. It makes for a great deal of cynicism, and I'm sure you can appreciate that.
I do appreciate that, and it's a concern to every Kenyan that really technology can take us anywhere where whoever wants a result to take us. But remember, elections are won and lost at the polling station. This is why we need to educate political parties and their agents to be watchful, very watchful at the polling stations, because they have a right there to demand and ask all the questions from the IEBC officials before they are pinned outside the polling station as required by the law. If they don't do that, then it means the result that will be carried from the polling station to the National Tallying Center is the result that will carry the day. And if it is not questioned at the polling station, then it means even the agents have accepted it is a correct result.
I'm going to, again, we're putting the thoughts among the pigeons. Another thought, the precedent that we've set, and it's happened twice now, that anybody is going to cry wolf at the announcement of elections and say they were all wrong, and then point the finger to the judiciary, to the Chief Justice, and say, will you call? Were they fair? Do we have repeat elections with all the financial implications? So we had one Chief Justice who said, yeah, everything is fine. We had another Kenya, the first country ever to call for a repeat. How wonderful that we repeated the election, when we don't actually have the material wherewithal to enjoy this particular luxury of rerunning elections, knowing full well that there's always been a great antagonism between the executive and the judiciary. Now, with somebody with a legal background, I'd like you to comment on that. Are we going to do the same again in August 2022? The elections were all false. CJ, tell us whether to do it again in 6 months' time.
The good thing is that our constitution allows anybody who is aggrieved by the decision of the IEBC to go to the Supreme Court for the presidential election result and for the other results to the lower courts.
But I'm saying it's a luxury that third world, developing, emerging economies cannot afford.
We cannot afford.
That we've got a brilliant constitution that
Yes.
keeps on saying we want leadership, and you could argue that we want leadership in any form. If it's that close, if what only separated between you was 5 votes, well, for the next 5 years, why don't you run it, and then next time I'll make sure it's me.
John, it's democracy. It's about exercising our rights. And if they are enshrined in our constitution, then well and good. We have that opportunity of going to the court, to the Supreme Court, and demanding for the answers. And when the verdict is given, we are law-abiding, we are democratic, we should accept that. Remember what happened in 2013, that we went to the Supreme Court and everybody said, okay, we accept and move on. We moved on to 2017 and it was nullified, and we still went for the fresh election. When we had the fresh election, the verdict was given by the court, and we have lived by it. So if 2022 comes, yes, and again we are aggrieved, we have every right under our constitution to go to court.
Let's take this analogy to a family situation. Mum, dad, couple of kids, and we've said, in our family, we don't have enough money for everybody to have fish and chips every weekend. By that which you've said, the IEBC has no money. There have been sort of punitive discrepancies towards the judiciary to muzzle them, to make sure they don't have as many judges as they want. So all the arms of the family that have a voice which wishes to express discontent have actually been muzzled in the intervening years. And you're saying everything will be absolutely fine in 10 months' time.
I may not look at it from your perspective, because I think
you to appreciate my perspective.
Yeah, I'm appreciating it, but I'm saying, yes, IEBC has come out in the open. They are being honest enough to admit they do not have enough funds, and they have to deliver a free and fair elections to Kenyans within the financial constraints that they have. They do not have any other choice but to work closely with the executive, with the legislature, and even the judiciary to ensure that justice is done and prevails for the people of Kenya when it comes to elections. But I think there is an issue of priorities. When you talk about members of a family, some want this, others want this. There are question of priorities in our country. There are competing priorities when IEBC lodges its budget to the Treasury, and the Treasury has to look at that budget. Remember, Kenya is known to run one of the most expensive elections, not just on the continent, but in the world.
I'm glad you say that.
I'm
glad you say that, because we don't seem to have any caps and balances on the amount of money that politicians spend in order to run. Again, think about that. Should we? I'm not blaming you. I quite realize that you're not the Messiah at present, but I am asking you, what should we be doing? Should it be possible to assume that you can only contemplate running for the elections if you've got 30 million shillings emanating from somewhere, which you're not prepared to reveal?
It's unfortunate that the vast majority of contestants are people who have money. Very few. I think we had one young person from Meru who vied in the last election, and he was going around with a bicycle.
Exactly.
Yeah, and he won.
But then when he got married, we all read the same papers. When he got married, the president went to the wedding and I think gave him a big car as a wedding present. So
so it looks like really when you don't have money,
if you don't have money,
you have to struggle, and that is the concern, and why it's important for the limits to be set in terms of how we spend money in elections. Remember again, we have
concerns for 2022. Is there any hope of those limits being set in time for the next, or are we waiting for 22 plus 5 equals 27?
The limits were set. But remember, last month, Parliament decided that those limits cannot be implemented and cannot be enforced during the 2022 general elections, because technically they believed IEBC had taken their time and deliberately submitted them late to Parliament, and so they were annulled. They are not going to be used in the next election. So we are going to see a situation where the level may not be as, the ground may not be as level as we think. So the playing field will be very, very favorable to those who have the money, and those who do not, they'll be struggling, because, campaigning and putting up all these materials for campaigns, the adverts, it's quite expensive in Kenya. It's very expensive.
Right. I'm going to, we know that our conversation is going to be inexhaustive. So here am I, do allow me to flip through my notes so that I had all the things that I had planned for our conversation. And I'm going to go to this idea of procurement of election materials. The idea of just having enough gadgetry to run them. Again, past experience, have things improved from your day to the present day in the next 10 months?
From the number of cases that have gone to the Public Procurement Review Authority, I think there's still, a lot of work to be done. The Kim's kit.
We take concern there.
Yes, a lot of concern. And you can see we are just waiting for the name of the company that will print the ballot papers to be announced. I think anytime now we might know, and the media was saying a Greek company has been tipped to win that very huge and lucrative tender. So I think the problem is that when the IEBC announces electoral and what we call strategic electoral materials in the papers, there's a lot of fighting for these tenders, and it's only those who have the muscle, the wherewithal, who can fight for that, and it's only those who are politically connected who can get through to those tenders. So there's a lot of concern that there is some political influence, if I may say, and interference somewhere. So you find that there is a lot of activity. In fact, in my time, I remember we used to say, now the hyenas are in town, and it looks like, the powers that IEBC has is really subdued.
Is there a hypothetical situation where we could not be able to afford to run the election in August 2022? Much as we'd like to. Can't afford it, Mum and Dad.
That would be impossible. The government has a responsibility to ensure the general election is conducted. So much as we see that there is a problem when it comes to adequate budgetary allocations, government has to squeeze hard. There is something that will have to suffer somewhere. Some other priorities that will get financial cuts for IEBC to get adequate. Remember, the Constitution talks about adequate budgetary allocation in Article 249. So we expect government will have to find the money for IEBC.
Tell me what your views might be on this topic. Is why is it absolutely necessary that they occur in August 2022? Why, for those who wish, what's the argument for there being no extension? August 2022 or bust?
I think it's very clear in the law. Remember, we came from a past where it was dark. Elections would be called at any time. There was dissolution of parliament, and would just hear a date announced by the president that elections would be held on this date. These are some of the key reforms that came in the 2010 Constitution. We needed predictability of our elections, so that in that predictability, we know we have a 5-year electoral cycle, so we prepare towards that date. And this is why the Constitution clearly provides for the second Tuesday of August in every 5th year. So that predictability gives us time to prepare and to just prepare the country. Because remember, the electoral cycle is a 3-phase cycle. We have the pre-election phase, we have the election phase, and the post-election phase. So now we are still in that pre-election phase, almost going into the election phase. And everybody must be prepared to engage in the electoral processes.
Thank you. I would like to turn to the voter, Mwananchi, Wanjiko. Has there been enough civic education on the electoral process for Mwananchi to be better prepared to vote this time? And I link this to the whole idea of voter apathy, of the registration of voters. And we're reading now that nobody's interested, really.
John, it's unfortunate that we have not had civic education in a long time. And when elections come, we do what we call voter education. There is a difference, John. There is civic education for us to understand the entire Constitution. We have a whole Constitution here which people do not understand. Right. Yet, when elections come, we just focus on voter education. So there is a gap here that we need government to engage the Mwananchi, because remember
I'll
article...
go back to my mantra, August 2022, the very predictable question that I'm going to put you here. Do we have enough analysis sound, voter versus 10 months, enough to significantly improve the situation? 10 months?
That's the unfortunate
because are
bit.
we approaching these elections with a certain level of apprehension, a fear of the past repeating itself, 2007, post-election violence, but even worse, and get people better prepared with more machetes and more machine guns?
I couldn't agree more with you. Remember, we have Article 10 of our Constitution that is very clear on our, national values and principles of governance that requires public participation in everything that we do. All state organs, all state institutions, we need public participation. But I would agree that yes, 2022 is coming. 9th of August, we are going to vote, but Mwananchi is not well versed with what is expected of them. We now have a voter education, being rolled out by the IEBC. They're inviting various institutions, various stakeholders to come and register and be accredited as voter educators for a very short period. Again, it falls back to the question of finances. They haven't been given enough allocation even for voter education. And this goes back again to some of the recommendations that Kriegler made when he came in after the post-election violence of 2007, 2008. He said there was no...
For the point of our viewership, just do expand on that name, Kriegler, the Kriegler report, and summarize some of the things that he said. I do believe it was a South African.
Yes, we had the South African judge.
And what did he say? He
chaired the Independent Review Commission, the IREC. That is a commission that came to investigate the post-election violence of 2007, 2008. And he made certain recommendations in terms of the electoral process. Because remember, he looked at the process.
How many of them again?
We are still implementing them.
Right.
And of course, the one that we know mostly is the appointment of commissioners to be done in a competitive way, to have a lean commission. And from 9 commissioners in 2013, we now have 7. And of course, having a very professional secretariat, that is happening. And I think there's a lot of capacity building for the staff to ensure they understand electoral management. And of course, again, there is all these technology, the use of technology in elections and how to improve on technology. Voter education, as I said, there was no enough allocation of funds during that time, and Kriegler recommended that we need to have enough funds allocated for voter education. It's important you have a well-informed electorate. Otherwise, then the elections will not make sense.
And then one of the ways that you can put in the vote of the young is to make it impossible to get ID cards so they can vote.
Yeah, that's also another area of concern, because there are many youth now, and you had the other day IEBC saying we have a target of 6 million of voters who have become of age. They have attained the age of majority, so they need to take out to come out, register to vote. But there is some slowness when it comes to the Office of the National Registration Bureau, which registers persons, and the Office of IEBC. There needs to be some synergy so that there's concerted efforts to register the young people. And they're trying it through the Huduma number process. But I don't know, it doesn't look from the numbers we saw recently that they are reaching the targets. But knowing Kenyans...
And the Huduma process is for the time being cancelled.
Again, the court has made a ruling that Huduma is unconstitutional.
Right.
We saw that ruling last week. So I think there is a lot happening, but I think there is a challenge in terms of voter registration for the youth. They need to be told to come out and register. This is the time they have.
I want to draw you on the words ethnicity and hate, because for the African politics, since independence, is always prefaced by the description that it's led by ethnicity, tribalism. And now, when we read our papers, the phrase that we hear about people pitching camp, there's a lot of pitching camp. Lilian has pitched camp at the coast, and Lilian has gone to the vote-rich mountain region. She's gone to the vote-rich. Is the understanding that there are parts of Kenya which are vote-poor, and they'll never be part of the...
Definitely, and I come from one of those marginalized parts, because you realize that we mobilize voters from our backyards, and we mobilize them in terms of the big five tribes. This is why the big five are all either going to the mountain, going to the coast, going to Western and Nyanza to mobilize support from their ethnic enclaves. But there are those small ones who they'll come later and look for them just to fill up, the fact that we need to add up the 50% plus one. Remember, it's fast past the post, but the principle of 50% plus one for the presidential is quite an uphill task for the whole country. So you might find...
I as a Kenyan, I feel disturbed and challenged by saying, if we're saying that maybe 50 plus 1 isn't quite it, why aren't people spending a lot of energy in changing that for the next elections, instead of having a complete overhaul of the constitution? And this doesn't work and that. Why not just get rid of the notion of who wins? Then maybe we won't have a tribal factor. Is it impossible rationally to work in another way?
It's impossible because of the numbers. We have done our census in 2019 and we have seen which ethnic groups are large. So those ethnic groups, unfortunately, they work together.
Conspiracy theories that the census process can also be rigged and cooked so that there are a million whatever of your people. All of a sudden, in the first 5 years, the birth rate has gone up. All your girls have spent their time becoming new mothers in expectation of the future. So I'm not dismissing what you're saying. What I am saying is what changes can be effective. African solutions to African problems. That has been a mantra that's been around for as long as I could read and write.
Now
Which
you see,
solutions might we seek now to deal with the problems that we're suggesting?
You see, the problem is deep rooted. It's historical. We started with the colonialists dividing us on ethnic lines, and you can see bad examples like what happened in Rwanda. Very, very terrible divisions within a society of people who lived peacefully, but now have those bad divisions. In Kenya, we had the post-election violence, and we saw what happened in the Rift Valley. We don't want that to happen again. But I don't know, maybe we need to prescribe it in the law. I know the Constitution has gone a long way. Article 91 is very clear. We talk about political parties having a national character. What do we mean by a national character? We are not going to see a political party full of Kikuyus or full of Luos, full of Luyas, full of Kalenjins, Kambas. But remember, we have those big tribes that form the big parties. There is no small tribe that has a big party, and that is where the big problem is. So you'll find that the other people are left out on the basis that they do not have the numbers. And numbers is what gets you to parliament, is what gets you to State House. You will not walk there with 2 people, your family members, 2 people and a small village backing you. You need numbers. And at national level, you will have to mobilize on the ethnic lines. And this is why before elections, it is strange that in Kenya, the parties mobilize before elections. Whereas in other developed countries, you've seen people form government after elections. That's when you know who is who, what you have in your basket. Can you come, we form government? But we do it before, because before you're going to get the 50% plus 1. You won't get it.
In addition to that, there's our hustler versus dynasty narrative, which is perhaps our sort of class divides. We're now having, your parents were poor, mine were rich. What do you make of that as an enticement to Kenyan society? You, Lilian, I'm not asking you to speak as a spokesperson, as an intellectual, as a thinker. Do you think this is something to be encouraged?
Personally, it's a very dangerous route to take. We cannot divide our society on status, our social status. It is so dangerous because the problem is we have corruption that has riddled our country. So if you are going to tell a poor person you belong there and the rich will always be rich and that line or the gap will keep growing, then you are inviting trouble. It's only a matter of time before those ones who are down there can gang up, because they are the majority after all, to come now for the rich. This is a very dangerous route to take and we should not encourage it. And I think we should tone down, the leaders should tone down and not make reference to this kind of division in society.
I'd like to end by, because we have a continental audience, by asking you two questions: whether you think we're ready for August 2022, and let's spread your thinking to a message that Kenya might deliver to Africa as a continent and indeed to the world when our big moment comes on August the 9th.
I want to believe we are ready for the elections. Remember, after 2017 general elections, we were in campaign mode. We were agitating for so many changes. BBI came. BBI now has gone down quietly. But now we have said IEBC.
BBI is resting. It's asleep, waiting to wake up.
We let it rest where it is. We are not going to disturb it.
Exactly.
But for now, we are moving on with preparations towards 9th of August 2022. IEBC has rolled out the election operations plan and their strategic plan, the boundary review operations plan for future, and we are looking at some of the activities. Remember, both administrative and statutory, that must be done by next year so that we are prepared. I believe we are ready, and the problem of finances, that one is the responsibility of the executive to sort. It is good that IEBC has come out guns blazing about it, but they are still doing their other activities, trying to bring the stakeholders together so that everybody can be engaged for these processes that are left for towards the 9th of August next year. So I want to believe we are ready, and this is the message that I will send. Everybody in Kenya has a responsibility. Remember, the Constitution talks about the supremacy of the people. The powers that we have given IEBC are the powers of the people. So the people can question, and the people should be able to take charge of the process and be engaged, be involved. So at the end of the day, we can all say, yes, we have done it together. We have had a free and fair election. It has been peaceful, and not point fingers at the IEBC, which is a constitutional commission and which should be protected, insulated against any political interference, and be supported by everyone.
And in terms of historicity of the continent, what might we do to be mentioned in the same breath as late as, let's say, Zambia, Ghana, the kind of countries where people say the beacon of democracy is turning black?
We keep giving those good examples of what is happening around other countries. And recently we saw what happened in Zambia. An opposition candidate, after 6 attempts, made it to be the president of Zambia. We give examples of Ghana in many aspects, in technology, in how they conduct themselves, but we do not emulate them. And I will tell you, the mechanism we have in the Political Parties Act, the Political Parties Liaison Committee, is something we borrowed from Ghana and also from South Africa. And this is a panel, is a committee that assists IEBC, the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, and political party players to work together in an amiable way, in an amicable way, to deliver elections. But remember, what we see in Kenya is a lot of finger pointing, a lot of blame on the IEBC, and a political elite that is not ready to work with the IEBC to put blame until that day when a verdict is delivered by the Supreme Court of Kenya. So I think we need to bring out all these good aspects that are happening around the continent. It is about democratization. It is not easy. And we always say democracy is expensive. We must be ready to live and nurture democracy.
And we have to end there, sadly, owing to constraints of time. Thank you, Lilian Mahiri Zaja, for your educational responses. You taught me a lot that I didn't know, and I'm going to read my constitution over again before August 2022. And thank you for watching or listening to this conversation on Pass the Mic. Let's Talk, an initiative of the African Center for Ideas Program through J Communications. Till next time.